A very good morning to all of you, dear students. Today we will discuss Daffodils by William Wordsworth. This is Unit 3 of your creative writing course. Okay? And because I have already shared with you the handouts on literary forms, and the first literary form, poetry, has been very comprehensively discussed with you, right? So I picked up the first text that is there in the book, that is Daffodils. Now, William Wordsworth, if you remember last year, you had read the poem Lines Written in Early Spring by William Wordsworth. At that time, the students who have studied in my class, I had told you that William Wordsworth is the poet of nature. This is the title he has been given. He is known as the poet of nature, and he is one of the most celebrated poet of the Romantic age, that is the 18th century. I'm using C for century. Okay. Now, before beginning with the text, remember one thing as far as Wordsworth is concerned. He is known as the poet of nature, and he believes that nature has the power of healing you. Nature has the power of changing your mood. Nature has the power of being with you every time in any kind of situation you are in. There was a philosophy in which Wordsworth believed, and that was known as pantheism. Pantheism, that there is existence of God in every object of nature, or presence of God in every object of nature. But as far as this particular poem is concerned, here he has something else to say. There is a popular saying, Wordsworth says that what poetry is spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings recollected in tranquility. Now the whole focus of the poem shall remain on this particular aspect, that is recollected in tranquility. How and why? Let us find out. So the poem says, I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high over vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. So, this is a real-time experience of William Wordsworth. The poem is inspired by his visit to the Lake District, where he saw a host of daffodils, a huge number of daffodils that were growing by the side of the river. And that experience is what is mentioned in the first paragraph. He wandered aimlessly, he moved aimlessly, lonely as a cloud that floats on high over vales and hills. So he says, I was wandering lonely like a cloud, and like a cloud I floated over the valleys and the hills. Vales and the hills, it stands for valleys and the hills. So he was moving aimlessly, and he compares himself to a cloud. When all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, and then his eye fell on these host of daffodils. It was a huge, like a river of daffodils that was there. So many of them were there. Beside the lake, they were growing beside the lake, and they were beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. So as the wind was blowing, the beautiful flowers, they were moving their heads as the wind was blowing. That is, they were tossing about. So in the first paragraph, what we got to know, that the poet is moving aimlessly, and suddenly he happened to see the host of, or the group of beautiful golden daffodils. Now in the second paragraph, he is explaining you what kind or how many they were. So he says, continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way. Now he's compared the daffodils to the Milky Way, the galaxy that contains the whole solar system. So innumerable, like the stars, he says, there were so many of them shining bright. They stretched in never-ending lines. So till wherever he could see, there was a huge line of daffodils that was growing along the margin of a bay. Bay over here is nothing but the bank, the kinara of the river, the lake. 10,000 saw I at a glance. So he says, I saw 10,000 of them, and in one glance. One glance, what is one glance? Glance is look. Pehli look mein he could see around 10,000 of them, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. Sprightly over here, he means to say that they were very happy, they were very lively, and they were enjoying the wind that was blowing over there, and they were dancing to the waves, or the dancing to the tune of the wind that was blowing. The waves beside them danced, but they outdid the sparkling waves. So first paragraph mein kya hua? He saw the daffodils. He was wandering aimlessly like the clouds. In the second paragraph, he tells us that how many they were. They were innumerable. You can't count them, but in one glance, he saw 10,000 of them. And in the third one, he is comparing the waves that are dancing in the lake, that are moving with the breeze, or as the flow of the lake, of the water is changing in the lake, and the movement of the daffodils is being compared. They are outdoing the dance that they are doing. Dance, can they dance? No, it is poetry. There are various, this poetry, there are various literal devices that can be used. So here they are being personified. What is personification? Personification is a literary device where you compare non-living things to, or you consider them as living objects. That is why here they are compared to dancers. In the first paragraph, he compared daffodils. He considered them as human beings, as if they were hosts and they were welcoming the poet. Now he's comparing them to dancers. So they are being personified as hosts, as human beings, and as dancers. So let us see what third paragraph says. The waves beside them danced, but they outdid the sparkling waves in glee. That is, they outdid them in shining. The shining of the waves, the moving of the waves, the dancing of the waves, they outdid them. They excelled them. A poet could not but be gay. When we started reading the poem, the first paragraph said, I wandered lonely as a cloud. He was lonely, he was sad, he was gloomy. But he says, when I saw this picture, when I saw this movement of beautiful daffodils, golden daffodils over there, how can a poet be sad in such a beautiful sight of nature? So, a poet could not but be gay, happy. In such a jocund company, jocund again happy company, golden daffodils. I gazed and gazed, looked at them, I gazed and gazed, but little thought what wealth the show to me had brought. And after having a look at the movement of the waves, after having a glance of the daffodils, movement of the daffodils, not the waves, movement of the daffodils, dancing of the daffodils, what he concludes, that I have earned something really precious. And what is that something precious that he has earned? That is, he has earned, I will rub this because I would connect to this. He has earned an experience. He has earned a memory which is priceless. Why and how? We will find out in the last paragraph. How? So, for oft when on my couch I lie. For oft, very often, whenever I rest, when I lie on my couch, in vacant or in pensive mood. Vacant, idle, when I am free. Pensive mood is thoughtful mood. They flash upon that inward eye. They flash upon that inward eye. Inward eye is the imagination. That is his mind's eye, which is bliss of solitude, which is delight of his loneliness. And then my heart, he says, then my heart with pleasure fills. So the solitude, the loneliness and the pensive, the thoughtfulness that he was facing, it all just, the gloom that he was facing, the sadness that he was facing, all just gets washed away with what? With the thought of the daffodils coming back to his mind. And then my heart with pleasure fills and dances with the daffodils. And when he is reminded of this beautiful scene of nature, his heart is filled with pleasure. He is filled with joy. Now I have given you one statement. Before I come to this, let me tell you one thing. When this poem Daffodils was written, it was written in 1804. But as far as the experience of the golden daffodils is concerned, or his visit to the Lake District, the walk, he was going on a walk with his sister on the Lake District on a spring morning. That was the experience of 1802. So here is the poem in 1804. Now try to connect the last part of the poem as well as this sentence, as well as this statement given by Wordsworth. So he says, what is poetry? Poetry is spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, emotions, recollected in tranquility. Tranquility, loneliness, sadness. What he recollects? He recollects this memory of the beautiful sight of golden daffodils. And what this sight gives him, it arouses in him the feeling, the emotion of being happy, and he forgets his loneliness, he forgets his sadness. Now, what does he mean by that? Sadness, what kind of sadness? He says that we are often busy in the materialistic world. We are busy pursuing, fulfill our materialistic pursuits. We are busy in that, and we forget what nature has to offer. When he goes back, and in the year 1804, when he's sitting in a pensive mood, suddenly this experience changes all his sadness. He forgets all his gloom, and he says that to my inward eye, to my imagination, to my inward eye, my inner mind, these daffodils, they came to my mind, and my heart was again filled with happiness. So it is only then he realizes that this particular incident, how it came back to his mind, and it filled his heart with lots of happiness and lots of joy. So if you have to conclude that what is Wordsworth trying to tell us through this poem, if we have to just conclude that, of course, this is his own statement that poetry whatever matter of poetry is, it comes through the experiences that one has, one has experienced, and through those experiences he gets emotions and which he can present in the form of poetry. But here, through this experience which he had in 1802, but he wrote about in 1804, he wants to tell us that nature is a permanent source of joy. Whenever you are sad, whenever you are upset, if you sit out with a cup of tea in the lap of nature, all your thoughtful moods, all your sad moods, all your pensive thoughts, they just wash away and you feel happy, you feel relaxed, you feel calm in the lap of nature. So this is what the idea behind the poem Daffodils is. The central idea of the poem shall remain this, that nature is a permanent source of joy. Reason being that it was only when the poet recalled, or these daffodils came to his inward eye, they came to his imagination, only then he realized the importance of this experience which he had 2 years back. So nature is a permanent source of joy. 2 important literary devices that we learned in this poem is personification, where the poet personifies daffodils as host, and he also compares them to dancers. So a non-living object, the flowers are being compared to living objects. Second device, literary device that Wordsworth has used is a simile. Simile and metaphor we have already discussed many a times. Simile is you are making a comparison. He has compared himself to a cloud. So that is how simile has been used. And then he has also compared the daffodils to dancers. So these are similes, simile and personification that is used by Wordsworth in this poem. That is all about the poem. If you have read the handouts and have tried to understand the literary form of poetry, in the very introduction I have talked about subjective poetry and objective poetry. Now before I end my lecture, I am leaving a question to all of you, that you have to tell me whether Daffodils is an objective poetry written by William Wordsworth, or is it a subjective poetry written by William Wordsworth. So with this, thank you so much and have a nice day.